So now we're recording, and let me bring up the next presentation. Actually, I'm going to share my desktop because I'm going to need to share my screen as well. And Peter and I are going to flip back and forth in terms of sharing desktops. So Peter, you should have that ability as well. And let me, no, I'm not, oh, shoot, sorry. So am I going to mute everybody, or everyone behave? Don't make me mute. I'll keep everyone unmuted for now. And if I need to, I'll mute people as we're going on. All right, so welcome to the Demystifying WordPress Themes. I give Peter again credit for the wonderful name of this. I think that's what drew so many people in here, and I get the cheap credit for the cheap graphic here of the crystal ball. But you know, the thought is that we've heard a lot of questions about what is a theme and how does a theme work. So this is a topic I think that we've been asking, people have been asking for quite a while. So our agenda, we'll do real quick introductions, Peter and myself, then we're going to tag team this as we've done a few presentations. So Peter will cover what is a theme. I'll talk more about the technical details of how themes work. Peter will talk about how do you choose a theme. I'll touch upon theme builders, kind of a new and exciting thing in the world out there. And then following along the future, Peter will cover what's the future of themes, and then he and I together will have some final thoughts. So that's our agenda. Real quick on myself, I'm Ray. I'm one of the co-organizers of the WordPress group. I was a developer for 25 plus years, going on 26, I guess now. Developer architect. I worked for a lot of larger corporations in the Hartford area. I've been using WordPress probably 4+ going on 5-ish years. Self-employed now. I'm a website developer working with small businesses. I live in Newington, married, no kids. We still have one crazy cat, and I'm a geek. And my contact information is below. Again, as I said, I'm also probably easiest to reach on the Facebook group or on Meetup. So that's me and Peter.
Hi, I'm Peter. I live in South Windsor. I have been using WordPress for about 10 years, and I started after using other content management systems, actually some things that I created, and found WordPress as a great way of having a supported tool that really did a lot of things. I'm the person who uses technology to solve marketing challenges, things like that. So I'm self-taught in a lot of these things. I work for myself at this point, out of my home, and that's really handy these days. And that's about it.
All right. So do you want me to, Peter, do you want to take over share on this?
If you drive with the screen, do you mind?
Okay. No,
I mean, we're already here. I'm not really doing any kind of anything just yet until we need to.
Yep.
So the big question is, what is a theme? So when we look at WordPress as a content management system, there is a set of files, programs that all work together to take content, store it in a database, organize it, manage it. But a big part of what you do with that content is then present it on a website for readers. Seems obvious, but the thing that does that, for the most part, is a theme working with everything else. So a theme is really a collection of files. Ray's going to get into the details of this in a little bit, but it's a collection of files that defines the look and functionality of a WordPress site. It consists of templates, little program files, style sheets, style sheet or sheets. And these are all things that it may or may not have. Scripting codes, images, different themes have many files, a few files. It all depends on how it's written and what it's meant to do. Again, it affects that the look and the user experience for visitors, but it also affects the back end look and functionality. A lot of code that's built into a theme may also be built into plugins. So some themes have plugin-like coding that another theme doesn't have, but you can still get that functionality through a plugin. So it's always interesting. And as we demystify all of this, there's a lot of things that you'll see, and I'll probably mention this a few times, where you're going to go out, you're going to Google something, you're going to look it up, pull up a YouTube video and go, what are they talking about? It looks nothing like what I'm doing. And that's because they may be using a different theme, the same theme from a different year, because the functionality even on the back end can change greatly. Part of that functionality is the customizer. So the customizer was introduced a couple of years ago and has really become, it's gone from, you know, themes that had a lot of options, and there's still themes that have a lot of options where you have a theme option screen, but many of those options are now managed through the customizer, which is a really great interface to really see what you're doing and how it affects what's happening on your site. Themes can be free or premium, or may have premium plugins. So you have this wide range, and you know, the number of themes out there in the market is in the tens of thousands. I'll probably come back to this, but the number you need to worry about is probably in the tens. You know, it's just amazing how big that market is. So Ray, if you go to the next slide. So, you know, themes were introduced not in WordPress, you know, 1.0 or whatever the initial, but it was all about in 2005. I thought this was kind of interesting just to think about that. You know, Matt Mullenweg, who is the founding developer of WordPress, you know, had this statement talking about, you know, putting these templates on so that your WordPress site can have different headers, footers, sidebars, and make it, you know, change the way your website works. You know, pretty early on in development, they said, we need this because we have this content management system. We need a theming system because people want their sites to look differently, and they want to do it with less code. Of course, if you're doing theming back then, you were probably still need to know some level of code, but you could, quote, install a theme and all of a sudden have your site look and act differently. Next, Ray. This is just a quick, you know, if you look at the default theme. So a theme is necessary for WordPress to work. That's why WordPress and a new install always comes with at least one default theme. And depending on a number of factors, including, by the way, your site host, your web hosting company may have an install script that might install a whole bunch of themes in reserve for you. There's a lot of factors that go into when you do an initial install, but the WordPress default themes, this is what we've seen over the years. On the bottom right, the 2020 theme that is really focused on the block editor. But you can see, you know, I mean, ultimately you're looking at some level of, here's a title, a content, a block where, you know, different information can go, including navigation. It was kind of interesting to see when you go back over, you know, and why, by the way, in the blue theme, the second one in at the top, I think it's called Klondike. They all had names. I think it was Klondike. Lasted for quite a while, and this is when a lot of people were already going into figuring out how do I change that, because it just wasn't all that interesting. So kind of interesting thing to see how themes have changed and where the focus has changed. Next, right? Yeah. Okay. So kind of the key to this to me, and again, as part of the demystifying, is always thinking about the different elements that make up a WordPress site and what the whole point of a content management system is, which is a place to store and manage your content, and then a way to present it through these layers that give it a look, a feel, some functionality and all. So themes separate the content from the presentation of the content, which is very important for a number of reasons, including if you do need or want to change a theme, and if you haven't become too engrossed in certain types of themes, and we could talk about that later, which themes sort of have a little bit more influence on how your content is saved and stored. You can change themes, or you can upgrade themes, or you can improve themes, because your posts and your pages, which are basic database elements, a title, a main content area, the taxonomy of categories and tags, that all sits with the post. How you present that is managed by the theme, so you can put different themes on that. The themes present the content using fonts, colors, placement, and even if content is displayed. Do we use the featured image on a post, or do we not use a featured image? Is the author box, all these different things that might be defined by the theme that you pick. And now as themes have progressed, There's even, you know, the options of turning those things on and off dynamically. If you go back in time, you might pick a theme that does or doesn't do something, and that's because it does or doesn't do that thing. Now we're looking at themes where you have a lot more control over, well, I want this, but I don't want that. And I might have a nice little checkbox that allows me to do that. As I said, the same content can be used with different themes. Only one theme can be active. Typically, there's always a plugin to do something crazy, but you know, while you can have a number on your site, you can try things, and there's different ways we can talk about how you can try things. Only one can be active. And as I mentioned, in terms of the idea of content, if it's stored, themes can also add, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, like plugins, new content areas. And in fact, some of the themes that might be very specific to a portfolio or photography, I'll probably mention this a couple other times, might have what's called a custom post type. You might see in your admin bar a new section where you're adding a specific type of content that the theme added, just like you might do, say, with a plugin. So depending on, you can see how all of this, you know, you can have kind of the same types of things happening in different places, and there are good and bad things to consider about that. And that's why sometimes, you know, like I'm somebody who wants less of certain types of functionality to be in the theme, because I want to know if I can pull in the best plugin for that versus, well, that theme has this level of. So a lot of things can happen in terms of the coding, but the main thing to remember here is your content is king. It is presented through the theme, through its various layers. Next, Ray. So the incomplete list of what can be affected, again, Ray's going to, I think, get into some of the details about the parts or the templates that are behind it, but you're pretty much talking about your headers, your footers, your sidebars, how those are presented, how a post is laid out, how a page is laid out, your archive pages. So maybe you go to a category and you get a list, you know, that is driven by the theme. A 404 page may be part of the theme. You may use a plugin to manage that, but, you know, or even override what the theme is doing. Whether your content is responsive, mobile ready, what happens in the customizer and what level of control you have. Similarly, the admin options, all of this being code in that theme. The custom post types I mentioned might be like, it adds new areas of content, plugins like functions already mentioned, and a whole lot more. There are things out there that you add as a kind of theme that totally changes the entire interface of WordPress. So it can be pretty complex, and you know, part of deciding what the right thing to do is saying what's the right level for you on how to you know, find the right theme and all. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
All right. Thanks, Peter. That's a good overview.
Any questions on that? Do we have any gaping holes at this point in terms of, you know, how some of these things work together?
Yes, Peter.
Yeah.
Just a question. The company I work for had a previous webmaster, and he has an existing theme, and it's very good. But if we wanted to switch up the look of our website and we decided to switch themes, how easy is that to do?
So the first caveat is that part of what it's dependent on is what he's done in the theme. That I've seen themes and codes where they start touching parts of even core, which is the core program. Hopefully, it didn't do that. But where there may be some hidden aspects of it. But if he stayed true to this idea of the content lives as the content, then I would pull. Do you have opportunity of doing like a staging site or make a copy of the site? Or
I could make a copy of that.
So if you make a copy of the site, and then you can easily, the one good thing is you can if you turn a theme on, that if you install a theme and turn it on, and if you're, especially, you know, if you're not on a live site, which we always recommend, and there are ways to work around that, but if you're on a staging site or a copy and all, and you try it and something just doesn't work the way you would expect, you could always switch back to the original theme and everything should work fine. So you're you're not changing anything in the content. Again, that's the whole idea of it's just a series of files that knows how to read and present that content. Then it's to what degree, you know, he customized versus either finding a theme or, in my opinion, finding the right theme and set of either page builder or blocks to allow you to replicate a lot of what was done. And we could talk later if you want me to take a, you know, a look at some of the things. I'd be happy to kind of give you an idea. It's hard without seeing it.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Good
I don't know if
question.
that, I hope that helped a little bit.
No, it did. Thank you.
I think the main
Yeah.
point that, or one of the good points in what Peter's saying too, is that, yeah, when you're just, and I'll show this a little bit too, is when you're activating another theme, you're not deleting the old one. So you still have the old one there, which is nice. So if things look completely messed up, you can always just flip it back and you're not going to break anything. So that's a nice thing about themes, that themes are separate from each other as well too. So we'll look at that a bit.
Yeah, and very, very quickly, the one thing that I personally experienced that was kind of interesting with a not homegrown, but a developer put this theme together is the developer added custom fields. I don't think we've talked about custom fields yet, but where you can have a post and you can add additional fields of data, and then the theme knew how to use or show that. If you bring another theme in that doesn't understand that you now have these custom fields attached to, say, a page, for example, then you'll have to kind of redo that or replicate it. It's the data's still there, but now you have a theme that doesn't know you added, I don't know, book titles. Say you were doing, you know, that's a classic, right? Genre in books when you're doing, you know, and maybe it's not part of the original, but you know, those are the types of things where, especially if you say something is missing, it may be a custom field. So there's a few things to initially look for.
Okay, so Peter.
Yeah.
Within this particular theme, there's different like looks, you know. So for example, the U theme that we're using, it's Morgan Stanley is like the look of that theme. But there's like, I can go in there, I feel like I could go in there and switch it up, you know, but it would still be the U theme, but I'm afraid to do that because I have no idea there. I would be, but within itself, even that can be kind of tricky.
Yeah.
Well, the thing we're probably not going to touch upon, or for time's sake today too, is child themes, which is another, yeah, that was one of our original topic we kicked off our WordPress meetups a couple of years back on. So child themes, another layer that we really can't cover tonight, but we'll, like I said, at the end, if maybe we can take a look at that example that you mentioned, so we can see, at least get some ideas what's going on there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. So how do themes work? We're going to talk a little bit technical here, but don't be afraid. Again, we're demystifying. So as Peter already touched on, you know, a theme itself is really a collection of files. So if you think about WordPress as the content management system, it's kind of the engine of running, you know, your website. Meanwhile, the theme is really, you know, they used to call it skin. You know, it's an additional layer on top of WordPress. So it's a mix of different file types, and you know, they're generally PHP, CSS, and JavaScript. And by default, they're stored just as regular files. We'll take a look at them in a minute in WP content/themes. So if you have access to File Manager or FTP on your website, you can look at all these files. And the nice thing about WordPress, you know, some of them may be what kind of you know, compressed or condensed, for lack of a better term, but for the most part, you can read these things and there's no magic there. You can see what's going on. So these different files and file types are in different languages, and the idea is separation. Again, as Peter was saying, that in an ideal world, and it's one of these like programming paradigms, is having a separation of concerns. So the idea is the layout of a page, any given web page, is handled by PHP. You know, so PHP is a server-side language, kind of on the fading end of the technology spectrum, but still it's out there a lot and still actively supported. And the whole purpose of PHP when it's running on a server is it'll create the HTML that gets sent down to a browser. So browsers understand HTML. PHP is what's running on the back end, creating that HTML. And there's a styling part as well. So styling is, you know, CSS, cascading style sheets. that's controlling things like what fonts look like, the size of fonts, colors, etc. Anything styling related is generally in CSS. And then the kind of the third separation or layer is functionality. So, you click on a button and something happens, or, animations or whatever, although some of that's in CSS now, but, the functionality, what's happening on your site, that's generally as part of PHP and JavaScript. So this combination of these different technologies together is really what makes up a theme. But at its lowest level, the only two files you actually need to have a valid theme are index.php and style.css. So index.php is the default template. We'll talk about templates a little bit later. And then you need a styling for that, because otherwise you're just going to output raw HTML. So let me just break out here for a second, just from a structure standpoint. And this is, I'm showing you here what's local on my machine, but if you went on a file server someplace, you would see this as well. So I'm using local by Flywheel, and on my computer, I have a public folder. Underneath WP content, I have themes, and right now this one just has one theme called 2017. So this is where you would find your themes. If I look at another site here, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but if I look at a site that I built with something like Divi, if I go to app, public, WP content, themes, this one has two themes. It has the Divi theme and 2017 theme. But like I said, there's no magic about this. Here's files, there's a bunch of CSS files and PHP files, etc. So you can see these things, you can copy them, you can edit them. Don't edit them directly on your website. Not a good thing, but there's nothing. The nice thing about WordPress is really nothing is hidden. A lot of other applications and application programming languages are compiled and all that, and you can't really see what's going on. Well, with WordPress, if you have access to the server, you can actually see the code and you can see what's going on in the website. So that's one thing to remember. Again, from a mystifying standpoint, you can find all the pieces that make up your theme. So one interesting aspect of WordPress, and I think this was in that Matt Mullenweg quote that Peter showed, is this idea of templates. So templates are really a powerful concept where, for any folks who are working on websites in the not so distant future, if you weren't working with a content management system, a lot of websites were kind of hand coded or custom coded. And in many cases, people really created, HTML. Every single page was either, hopefully not hand coded, but somebody would use a tool to create that. And the thing is, there was no good reuse of parts of pages, except the old reuse is copy and paste. So people would copy and paste different things into different pages. Well, what WordPress, one of the interesting I think achievements it brought along is this idea of templates. So WordPress, as I said, the engine of WordPress is using these templates to build a particular page that then gets displayed back to a visitor of your website. So these templates are written in PHP. I mean, as I said, that's one of the languages that's used to create your theme. And what the templates are is they're a combination. We'll look at them in a second. It's a combination of PHP code, HTML, and then WordPress functions, which they call template tags. So you're creating a web page by using PHP as a server language to make, let's say, database calls or do any functionality you want. You're creating HTML to create the structure of your page, and then you're actually calling WordPress to get data out of the database. So WordPress has separated all that stuff of, you don't have to be a database expert. You just call these WordPress functions to get data from your website. So I said templates, the real thing that templates are supposed to do, or the value of them, is that they generate the HTML that gets returned back to a browser. So that's the key of a template. And in most cases, you're using one or more templates to create a page or a post. So this is the idea of reuse. You want to break things down, or the template or the theme creator wants to break things down into small reusable chunks. And the idea behind reuse is it makes sense. You don't have a bunch of different places they're doing the same thing, but also it makes your website and theme easier to maintain, to debug. They can just change small pieces without breaking an overall theme. So template parts is the term that they use for these smaller reusable components. So most themes you'll see are made up of really a lot of different template parts, and we'll look at this in a second. And here's what some of the code looks like, these template tags. So this is code. If you're not familiar with PHP, PHP looks a little intimidating when you first see it. It's a oddball language, but it's really not that complex. Like this in here, this question mark piece, you know, these things between the brackets, that's PHP code. And all this is really doing is you can read, it's getting the header. So on a template, this is getting the header for that page. And this code, get header, you don't code this if you're creating a theme. This is WordPress. This is one of those WordPress template tags that you use. So in the WordPress, what they call the codex, there's a huge documented list of all these tags. We're not going to look at the codex today, but you know that's part of it. Is you're using what WordPress core and those people have created for you. You know, we talked earlier about the news about WordPress 5.5. You know, all these great things that WordPress is doing in core. Now, if you're a developer creating a theme, you get access to those things, so you don't have to build those on your own. So here's just an example of kind of what these template tags look like. Let me see if I have. Okay, so let me show you just real quick. I'm not gonna, again, I don't want to scare people off with code, but just to show there's no magic in here, I have a demo site up here, and this is I went back to the old 2017 theme because it's one of the simpler ones prior to the blocks, the days of blocks. So if you go into theme editor, again, depending on your access level, you may or may not have this option. If you're an admin, which I am obviously on this site, I have access to this. And when you first open it up, you know, WordPress tells you, hey, don't make changes here. But again, this is just demo. We're just looking at things together. But here, these are all the files that I showed you. These are all the files on the server for this 2017 theme. And the templates themselves, I'll show you a real simple one. Let's look at the footer. So this is the footer template. So the footer template, it may look like a lot of gibberish in here, but you know, it should be fairly straightforward to read what it's doing. You know, it's calling another part. It's looking for widgets. So do you have any widgets in the footer? Is there a navigation menu? You know, do you have any social navigation menu things? And then it's getting a site info template part. So I'll just show you this real quick. And so here's the footer. Here's the site info. So this is a part that now, as I said, is being used in that previous template. And all this is doing, if you get through all the gibberish, is it's saying it's printing within this link, proudly powered by WordPress. And so where do you see that on the page? Well, again, I haven't changed this. This is the default theme. There it is. So that's what the template is doing. So this is made up by the footer template. This code is basically saying, call this function in WordPress, print out, made by WordPress. So that's the thing, that, you know, the themes are just made up of all these different parts together. Now, where the magic comes in is this next section we'll talk about. Like, how does WordPress know that, you know, it should use that for the footer? Like, well, you know, how does it know how to assemble these different Lego pieces together, if you will, to create a template? And that's the template hierarchy. So these are the rules that are built into WordPress to determine which template or templates to use for a given page. So if you think about it, when you know, somebody is typing in their browser, they're typing in, you know, google.com or amazon.com, you know, that's going to make a call out to your website someplace or Amazon's website, and you need to return a page back. Well, that page isn't going to look the same as, you know, the contact us page or the about us page or whatever, or the blog page. So WordPress knows, based on the content type and the URL, you know, how to match those two things together, which template to use to then, you know, build that page. So the way that this hierarchy works is it really, if you think about it, it tries to find the most specific template first, and then it falls back to more generic ones. And we'll see this in a picture in a second. So what the power of that is, if you want to, you can create a template that's specific to, so, you know, this page, like Ray's FAQ page. I can have a template that will only work and only display that page. All my other pages on my website won't use that template. So that's the power of it. Or, you know, I can have no template and everything falls back to index.php. So that, you know, there's it's sort of like cascading style sheets in a sense. It's looking at this hierarchy of saying, you know, which template do I use for this page? So as I said, you know, it looks for most specific, and then it falls back based on these rules we'll see in a second. And then your ultimate fallback. That's why I said a theme only really needs 2 files, like to be a real working theme: index.php and your style.css. Index.php, it's the last resort. It can't find anything, that's the template that gets used. So we looked at this a little bit already, and Peter showed some of these. So when we say templates, think of these as logical parts or chunks of a website. So a template could be something as granular as your header and footer or your sidebar. A template could be something bigger, like a page or a post, an entire page or post, your 404 page or archive page, etc. So that, again, the nice thing about template parts, the parts can be big or they can be granular. So we'll have a link to this picture. This is actually a live website as well. The picture looks a little bit confusing the first time you see it, but the way you read it is it kind of logically flows from left to right. So any given page, if you think about somebody is accessing a page in your website, they want page, let's say this is your About Us page. So an About Us page is a page, it's not a post. So the first thing WordPress says, okay, I know by the content type, this is a page. So let me see, is this if there's a PHP page, a template out there for the About Us page. So it would be aboutus.php. If it doesn't find that, it keeps going up and up the hierarchy, where eventually it'll go to page.php, which most themes have. So the idea is, again, depending on the different requested page or content type, WordPress behind the scenes is going through this flow saying, okay, let me see if I can find one of these, and let me always try to find the most specific, and then as this picture goes to the right, these things become more and more generic. So hopefully that makes sense. And again, this is a lot of stuff where you may never look at the code behind it, but be aware of this. And one tool that I'll share, and we can actually look at in a second here before I give it back to Peter, is there's a plugin which we include a link for in the presentation called Show Current Template. And it's a free plugin. Most times you won't use this unless you're debugging something. I use this quite a bit because a lot of times I am working other people's themes, as a developer. So what the cool thing about this though is this will show you in WordPress itself, if you have this turned on, it'll show you which theme is currently being used. So if I look at this page, I'm on my home page, the current theme, again, the most specific one is index.php. If I'm looking at, let's say, a blog post, it's using single.php. So if you go back to this picture again, single.php is over here. So this whole hierarchy, WordPress is figuring out on the fly. I'll just show you one more example. If I do a search on, let's say, lorem ipsum, now it's showing the template is the search.php. So, I mean, this is happening, you can't even see it, but WordPress behind the scenes is figuring out which template to apply. So a plugin like this, where this may be of use to anybody, is, as you start, especially as we start talking about theme builders a little bit later too, if you have a page and you're trying to figure out, where's this coming from? How do I change this? Where is the styling and all this stuff? I can't figure out what's going on here. If you install that plugin, at least you can start to understand the hierarchy of, here's the different parts that made up this page, and here's where they come from. So you can start digging in a little bit deeper and understand maybe, where you may have an issue or where you may need to change something. So I'll open up for questions in a second of just from the technical thing, but just the idea behind this is, again, it's, yes, there's code that is making up a theme, but WordPress itself is applying this hierarchy to determining, what parts to put together. And those parts, as I said, can be a combination of things. They can be a combination of PHP code, which is doing your structure and your HTML. It can be a combination of CSS, which is doing styling, or it could be JavaScript and other functionality. So all those together are the technical parts. Any questions on the technicalness before we move on to the choosing a theme?
Well, I have a comment for you.
Mm-hmm.
So do me a favor, go back to the theme editor on the back end.
Yep.
So this is very, very powerful, and this is a way, and this might be helpful for somebody like Denise, who, you may find that you're the developer before did a lot in here.
Yeah.
You can look at things, but what's very, because it's right there and there's the warning, I just want to make sure that we make it very loud and clear. Don't fiddle in here unless you know what you're doing. And in fact, don't fiddle in here. This is where we would talk about if you knew you needed to change something with an existing theme, you make a child theme, which then has a file that supersedes the file and things like that. So you're never touching anything in core. I would recommend never touching anything in a theme that you've purchased or downloaded. If you have a theme that you like, but there's something you want to change, like say you wanted to change that footer to say, you know, not powered by, but developed on WordPress, you can go in that file, change it, and it'll change that text on the front of your site. But you could also create a child theme with the same file name that would then sit on top of it and do that work. So this is, you can do a lot of damage really quick by like deleting one character. So I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on that.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's really something.
And it's not just the breaking part of it too. It's kind of breaking, but if you're changing, let's say, a theme that you did not develop, you know, let's say you pull down Astra or something else, like I just wanted to do this one thing. Well, guess what? Next time Astra puts out a security update or one of these themes,
right?
As soon as you do an update, all your changes, if you didn't create a child theme, they're all gone. They're all going to be completely overlaid. So you never want to go in here and do this.
Yeah, you don't want to store any kind of files that you're referencing in the theme directory that you don't have control over. And again, that's where you would use a child theme. So just,
I will say one last thing about just from the way the themes were built, and this is kind of going towards the I think hopefully towards what Peter's going to say of picking a theme. In the past, unfortunately, you had to use child themes, I think, a lot more. We'll talk about the future later. You did have to be a bit more technical if you wanted to just change that little footer thing we talked about.
Yeah.
I mean, this wasn't that long ago. I mean, literally a couple of years ago, if I wanted to change that copyright symbol or that site info thing, I would have to, in many themes, I'd have to create a child theme, and I have to make a copy of the footer.php file, because that's how child themes work. They override. And I would have to go in there in PHP and modify that. That was the old world. So things have come a long way, and I think we'll talk a little bit in the future about, you know, a lot of this stuff. It may sound complex about the technology behind it, but I think things are changing a lot in the WordPress ecospace, where I don't think we're ever going to get away from, you know, developers creating themes, but
right.
You know, this whole world of doing this PHP encoding thing things are changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just had a quick question. It may not be right now on the topic, but it can come back later. Regarding the 404 page error, when that shows up in Google Analytics, how do I locate that page? How do I know what page?
There's not a page. That's what a 404 is telling you. So 404, it really just means, let's say if I go to this site, this is my demo site, and I type in gibberish, 404 is a response code that says, I can't find this page, and that's what returns back.
Right.
But what happens is this template, as you can see, this theme happens to have a 404 page template.
Right.
So this is a great example, actually, Jason. I'm glad you brought it up. So what happened here was my theme said, when a 404 error gets encountered, return back this template, which says, oops.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so that's what that means when it appears occasionally.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you'll see 404 pages that can be fantastically designed, right? So whatever you go, you know, something a funny picture, the search box is often there, things like that. That's either the theme, sometimes a plugin. Again, just another place to put code that does something.
Okay.
But that you're taking that 404 error and saying, when I get that, do this.
I'll show just real quick my goofy one. This is for the nonprofit I support. Here's our 404 page, because it's a Polish genealogy website. Oh, there you go.
Hey.
The kid. Makes you feel better.
Okay, but that's not something that, like, because a lot of times I'll pull a lot of stuff in Photoshop and manipulate it and design it and then pull it into the website. Would that be a reason for that 404 edit page error? No,
that'd be, again, if somebody types in a URL that doesn't exist.
Okay,
I type
so
this
it's
gibberish.
not on that end.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting a lot of 404 errors, you might want to check to see if you've got some broken links on your site. You know, if you've got something that's going consistently to a page that doesn't exist.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
All right.
Hey,
Ray,
Ray.
again, if you don't mind driving for a little bit.
Oh, do we have another question?
Yeah, Ray, before
Oh,
you
yeah,
jump off,
please.
so if I wanted to create a template, like a case study template, where would I put that?
Well, how would I recommend doing that now? Well, so part of it is, and here's the other thing that maybe I didn't cover very well. Template, as the name implies, is something that you want to be more general. So for example, I probably would, even though WordPress allows you to be very specific, for example, I probably would not create a template for a page that's the one and only page on my site. I probably wouldn't need a template for that. Where the templates come in is, let's say, and I'll show an example of this later when I'm talking about theme builders, is if you want to build, let's say, a template for your blogs of a particular category, or Peter's example of books or authors, a custom post type, those kind of things you would create templates for them. But if it's just a single, unique page, you probably wouldn't create a template for it. You just build, if you're using a page builder, you just build a page for it.
Yeah, I think I understand that, but I'm thinking, like, let's say I hope to have 20 case studies.
Mm-hmm.
And when people are building them, I want them to pick a page type, and it basically have.
So the old way you would do it, you're jumping ahead a little bit of the old way you would do it is, first off, those case studies probably would be custom post types. You probably would create a custom post type, which again, we separate topic that we definitely cover in the future. But
Yeah, we need to.
So a custom post type would have its own data. It'd have things like, who was the case study about, et cetera, et cetera. Now to style that, you're right, a custom post type is not a regular page. It's not a regular blog post. You'd want to style that or lay it out in a special way and pull those custom fields that Peter talked about. The old way you would do that is, let me go back to the hierarchy, you would create a custom post type page. So you would create a page called casestudies.php. And if that's what your case study custom post type was, you would have to, in PHP, just like I showed, you would have to build a PHP file to style those. That's how you would do them. Fortunately, in the new world, which I'll touch upon later, it's much better. you don't need to create it in PHP.
Yeah.
That's a teaser for later.
Yeah.
Okay, just for the sake of time, we'll cover back these questions. If people have questions afterwards too, I just want to make sure we at least cover what we have here. So how do you choose a theme? All
right, how do you choose a theme? Well, so I want to make sure we understand, some things to consider, and even what we just mentioned, themes have evolved. They've evolved a lot. The interesting thing about that fact is, while they have evolved, you can still find some themes that are pretty darn old, and that have not quite evolved, and we'll talk about how to kind of look for that. But there's been a lot of changes, and that's important in some of the things going forward, and how you look for them, how you get help on them, things like that. You want to consider when you're choosing a theme, and we'll get into details about, what type of theme do you need, now and going forward. Are you looking at something free versus paid? What to look for, what to stay away from, and let's be careful about where you get your advice, including me. Well, let's get into the details of some of these things. So, themes have changed as WordPress and the web have changed, and this kind of goes. This is not exactly chronological, but again, the idea is, and the reason why I bring this up is because all of these steps speak about, in some way, even though not directly here on these words, but the different parts, templates that you're using, and how they work together. The other thing that's important is there are people that are, on this call that are going to be using tools that are somewhere along this spectrum of the different types of themes that we have. So it's important to know that we're not all on the same page, other than the fact that there's this core way things work, which is what we're hoping to demystify. But when you get into the specifics of your theme, and what you're using now or what you're looking for, there is this full spectrum of the different types of themes. Again, initially, and when you go back to when you were looking at themes, you'd find a theme and it'd be like, okay, what color is it? What's the font? Where do I have sidebars? Where am I putting things? Pretty basic, coming coming out of the gate. Then theme developers started getting really specific. I say then, but again, along this mushy spectrum timeline, you would get, you know, a greater emphasis on finding a theme to match a specific niche. So, oh, this is a hiking theme, and this is a food theme, and this is a blog or a magazine, and some are more important than others based on how content is used. But you would go and to this day, people are looking for the theme that matches their niche, and we'll talk about that a little bit. There were more as you had themes and plugins, and there was this rise of the multifunction all-in-one themes that had offered more and more features. Some did better than others. Ray's a Divi user. Divi is one of the strongest players out there right now for a lot of good reasons. But it is both a page builder and a theme that work together. And Ray, you correct me if I'm wrong, but work together in such a way that you really are in that environment. Avada is something that a lot of people use, which is also this all-in-one, and it's got a lot of the functions that I might say, well, on another theme, you're going to pull in the plugins, but Avada has a lot of these things built into it. At one point, and to a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of people who use Avada and love it about, you know, over everything else, because it's what they know, it's what they're comfortable with, it does all the things that they need it to do, because it's an all-in-one theme. But, you know, ultimately, is that the right place for you to go? It's some of these things to consider. Frameworks and child themes. When I first got involved, where I put in all my time was in the Genesis theme and the child themes that you would get. So the child themes used Genesis as the theme framework, and these child themes had all the styling so that you could say, oh, I like that style or that style, even though the main Genesis theme framework was in play. Then as things changed on the web, we focused more on responsive and mobile ready, and then that would be a feature that themes would say, oh, this is a responsive theme. Well, now all themes better be responsive, but you have to look, because a lot of old themes out there. But even when you went to the repository and you would find something, responsive was the selection criteria. I went to look for it and it's gone, and it's because they all better be. And in fact, and Red, you know, they pulled out a lot of things out of some of the repositories.
Yeah, and you're right. I think some of it was there's just old stuff in there.
Yeah.
Things are cluttered. I mean, the repository itself, and Peter touched on this. It's, to be honest, I mean, there's always that thing about the most popular themes of the day. A lot of that's just pretty useless, you know,
Yeah, it really is.
or the most downloaded. And I mean, the most downloaded, I guess, makes sense. It does, but that's a thing. We'll talk about this as well. Most downloaded doesn't mean it's the best. It just means,
yeah,
you know, it's the popularity contest thing.
Yeah,
so.
there's a lot of factors. We'll talk about some of that. As page builders came in, now you had a lot of power over. So here's your theme, but in your content area, you had a lot of control over. Then you've got the customizer that gave you greater control over a lot of things that the theme built into it, including headers and footers. If they built that into the theme, that says in your customizer, you can try some things. A great theme that I really like now, we talked about, I think it was the last call or 2 calls ago, was the Cadence theme, and how powerful that is, that there's like a header type builder in it. It's not a block builder yet, and we'll get to that. But you have a lot of control in the customizer. Then the page builders were adding full theme builders. Ray's going to touch on this a little bit, where now you can control header, footer, specific pages, conditional things that says if this type of page, show this kind of content and all. So now you're really building an entire theme using additions to the page builders that control more content. Well, then we get Gutenberg, blocks, block patterns, which now we're saying, well, wait a minute, we want to put a lot of that work into the core editor. So instead of just the classic editor, we've got a lot of layout designs, but now with those layout designs, we can group those so we can start building those in. And the next phase of that is going to be a real potential game changer, is full site editing, where you're using that block editor also to change headers and footers and put conditionals and do all of the things that some of the theme builders are doing. So there's this evolution in the types of themes as you're thinking about when you're looking at them. It seems like a lot of complexity, and you may come across some of these things. Some of them you don't have to pay attention to, but just know that they're there when you come across that in the discovery phase, say, as you're looking at themes. I felt was a little important.
And Peter, if I could just throw in
yeah,
real quick,
please.
that's on. So from an evolution standpoint too, like you said, this wasn't laid out chronologically, but it
Right.
does follow a lot of just the evolution of the web itself too. And as I touched upon this, we're now showing code. In the past, you had to be a developer. Like I said, my background is as a developer. So in order to make these changes, these earlier themes that Peter mentions, you needed a developer, to go in there and do really what today seems like blatantly simple stuff. Like that thing I showed about changing a little footer symbol there. You needed a developer to go in there, or somebody who's comfortable enough with code. I think what this evolution is showing, and this is where I hope that WordPress itself is evolving throughout this, is a lot of people on here, without a show of hands, are not developers, and that's the power of WordPress. It's putting power back into people's hands of content producers. So you're a content producer, you don't want to learn PHP, you don't want to learn JavaScript or whatever else. You want to just be able to drag and drop things and build your website. So I think this evolution of themes kind of follows evolution of websites in general, where as things are getting simpler, the themes themselves have evolved quite a bit, and I think that's kind of where we are today.
Mm-hmm.
So,
move to the next.
Yeah.
So this complex topic. One of the things in terms of demystifying this is, and I'll probably talk about this on each slide, is there is no one answer. There is no best, but there are things that you need to think about. So when you're looking at, well, what does a theme do and what kind of functionality and the look and feel and interaction is, well, what type of website are you putting together? A blogging only site has very different requirements, if you will, than maybe something where you have a lot of e-commerce, or you've got a full portfolio of things like that. So when we worked on the Gardening with a Madman blogging site, and really what we were able to do is focus on the simplicity of getting people to the actual blog posts, which was what they spent their time on and what the focus was, and making it as easy as possible for people to get that through a simpler interface than what they had. But an e-commerce site, you're going to look at different things. Now, the nice thing about e-commerce in WordPress is that the WooCommerce plugin works with really most themes, and it has its own kind of functionality. But there are definitely themes that are better at it and better working with WooCommerce and give you more levels of control. So, again, you're looking at matching what you're trying to do, marketing sites, and the list of sites goes on and on and on. But thinking about, all the things that you want to do, including multiple things. Well, I want to blog, I want to have e-commerce, I'm marketing and selling. So, you're looking at the flexibility, simple, how complex you're getting in your theme. You're going to hear a bias with me. Simple and flexible to me is preferred over complex and proprietary. And a lot of the all-in-one themes, for example, you'll get a level of complexity and proprietary, a level of proprietary focus where it's hard to decouple from that because of the way they do things. So just being aware of that, and at the same time also not overdoing what you need. I was helping somebody. She was told, and this is the whole thing, Avada, best theme you can get. You got to get Avada. Absolutely. She had the most simple website with like 5 pages, just content. She didn't need any of the functionality that came with it. And the one thing she wanted, Avada didn't do the way she wanted it to. So it's, there's a lot of things to do. And, that's also why, user groups like ours and being able to ask these questions, but, realizing that, don't ever take anyone's word, including mine, that anything is the one best way to do things, because there's a lot of variables in place. When you get into simple, this idea of the general versus blank page versus specific, there is a place where you might find something that says that does exactly what I want it to do, the way it looks. And I'm not saying, oh, you have to go design it yourself. I'm just saying, just make sure it does exactly what you want, and know that, you may find yourself going down a path that you ended up having to come back and go a different way because there's certain things that are missing. With the page builders and the block editor, right now I find it so much easier. I'll probably say this 5 times. To be able to say, pull the pieces together to build the page you want, than to grab a page, a theme that says this is what it looks like, and then have to figure out how to undo things or which buttons to click on some admin page. So, you know, just think about how complex your site is when looking at the themes. Right, next slide, please. So, as I touched, what's the perfect theme? There is no perfect theme. There is, and I've seen, you know, the endless search for the perfect theme through I started looking at some of the major sites for buying themes, or pulling from the portfolio and all. There are tens of thousands, 100,000 themes out there to go find. And I'm telling you, if you look at, I'll give you a list of 50, if not 20, if not 10, that will do most of what you need. But again, there's nothing saying you can't go in the repository and look for something that matches some of the criteria you're looking for to kind of say, well, let me see what's out there. But I just want, I want folks to know that there is no one best way. The only reason I'm super sensitive to this is even on the user groups on Facebook and all, there's always the question, what's the best blank? And then there's somebody with the single answer. And it's don't go there, because you'll go down some path that you don't want to, you know. Is it Avada? Is it Elementor? Is it Divi? Well, it all depends. And it also depends on the type of environment you're comfortable with and what you end up knowing and learning over time, you know. So this idea of focusing on the theme thumbnails and looking for that perfect picture, you gotta keep in mind in demystifying this, when you're looking at a theme thumbnail on some website that's selling you a theme or the repository, you got to keep in mind, and I'll probably say this elsewhere, that's just an image and that's just words. You're going to replace the image, you're going to replace the words. So something that has a picture of food and it says we have the most delicious food, and say this is a food theme. Well, it's only a food theme when you show those words with those pictures. If you change it to a cat and say we have the prettiest cats, you now have the cat theme. So this idea of looking at the pieces and trying to find something that is perfect based on a topic is much less important than to say either it has the elements you want or it's an environment in which you can build what you want effectively. This idea of undoing something that you've purchased can be so much more time consuming and frustrating than allowing, you know, being in an environment where you can add the things that you need and want. All right, so next slide, we talk about a little bit about free versus paid. The WordPress.org theme repository, so WordPress.org/themes. All those themes are free, and you can do a lot with. I found some fantastic free themes. Astra, who by the way got in trouble a little bit. I don't know. Anybody know the Astra got in trouble story?
Like not ads, but they're putting affiliate links or something.
But they put affiliate links in, so click on this to, you know, enhance it, and it was an affiliate link, so they're making some money, and that was against the terms. So they got pulled for a little bit. They got put back on right away. It doesn't change anything about the quality. It's a boneheaded thing, you know, and they owned up right away to it. But you know, Cadence is a free theme. The default themes that are free can be made to be very flexible, again, depending on how you enhance it and all. But there's a lot of great quality free themes there. A lot of those have the freemium model, or there's upsells where you add enhancements to it through a paid model, through licensing. You know, Astra, I have the Astra agency package where I have all of the Astra add-ons where, you know, the free package allows me to have this level of control and functionality. The paid package gives me this much. It's a pro plugin that takes that core theme and adds all this different functionality. And there's any number of ones. I'll mention a few at the end that kind of fall into this category where you can start off here and they say, you know, I need greater functionality. Then you might decide, you know what, I really like this environment. It's worth it for me to pay the license and all. And we'll talk a little bit about why, you know, paid is good. But there are many theme shops that sell the premium themes. Theme Forest, Mojo Marketplace, Template Monster, probably the biggest. My goodness, try to navigate Theme Forest, where by the way, is where you're going to get Avada and a lot of those ones where that's the top seller. You're gonna the list of themes is literally endless. 49,000, 50,000 themes. You can't navigate, and you can't believe that they're all quality and all being downloaded and managed and maintained with any kind of level of focus. It's just, and I've seen a lot where it's just this, and they tweak one thing, it's a new thing. They tweak one thing, it's a new thing. So I don't spend any time in any of these premium theme marketplaces, you know, and again, as a marketplace, what's different, and I forgot to mention this, you know, Theme Forest, those themes that you're going to find in Theme Forest are from hundreds, thousands of developers. So it's, you know, a developer can take their theme and put it in Theme Forest, and you hope that there's some level of vetting and all, but it's different than like there's a Theme Isle is a place where they sell themes that they've developed. They have 3. But they are the developers of those 3 themes, and they're really good, and they support them, and you find up-to-date videos on things like that. So you can find things in these marketplaces, but I don't know, there's too many caveats for me. Now, so again, in this idea, paid themes can offer better support and ongoing development. A paid theme, if you've got a company that's focused on a theme that they are really you know, they are developing, and that is the business that they're working on, that's a great place to be, and looking at how they offer support. But there are plenty of paid themes out there that have terrible support or have been abandoned, but they'll take your $19 or $20, you know, $29 or whatever fee. If you say, oh, that was a pretty picture, the thumbnail I liked, and you load it and you don't like it. And there's one other thing that doesn't get talked about a lot, Ray. I don't know if you pay much attention to this, but the whole concept of the deeply discounted nulled themes.
I've heard of them a little bit.
So nulled, what's that?
Those are like the shady theme bundles or whatever you can buy.
Well, yeah, the theme bundle, because so in the world of WordPress, we everything's under the open source GPL licensing, and I'm not a licensing expert, but the idea is you can take software that you've had and you could use that to make other software. So what's happening out there is that there are these places where if you do just a search for a theme that you heard about that you like, you can find a very, very cheap version that's not from the developer. Don't, for a lot of reasons. And not only does the developer not get any money, but in a lot of cases, malicious code has been injected into the software. So in the too good to be true, how can I get this thing that would normally, maybe I license, say, a super premium theme, I don't know, $100 a year, or, you know, a lot of times I renew. I have things that I've licensed and it's $40 a year, not a lot of money. But if they're saying, oh, we'll give you 100 of these premium themes that would cost you $2,000 for a mere $20, don't do it, because it's not going to be good stuff. And yeah, it could be malicious code in there. So luckily, these things seem to be one level, not quite dark web, but one level down from what you're saying. But if you do just a search for a particular type of premium theme, you can find these super discounted things that are just no bueno. All right, next slide. So things to look for. So recent frequent updates, right? So you know, WordPress is all about updating. So looking at, hey, I'm looking at a theme in the repository. When's the last update? How many installs? And are there good reviews? Can I see, are people saying good things about it? Customer support and an active user community. I find the active user community one of the strongest things for me personally. You could probably guess, you know, I'm on podcasts, I'm on different webinars and user groups and all. And when you have an active user community where people are talking about and all, you know that you can get an answer, even if the answer isn't necessarily right from the developer. And of course, you know, a developer having a good customer support mechanism in place, you know, do they do ticketing? Do they have a number of things like that, you know, are all important, but I also like to have that active community. The things that we kind of keep talking about is it flexible and extensible to your needs? Something also that we kind of, you know, that needs to be addressed too is, and this is where you're going to get this from, like the user communities and kind of poking and looking at reviews. You know, is the theme fast and efficient, and speed, and Bill, you'll comment on this, is absolutely important. Content number one for good SEO, but if your site is super slow and bloated and doesn't work well, you're not going to rank high, because Google is going to say this is not a good user experience. So that I think is really important to pay attention to. Responsive and accessible. So responsive should be considered a given, but accessible is something that is of greater importance. Accessible meaning, do they have things built in that make it easier for people who have a disability? Are they using a screen reader because they're blind? These types of things are important. And typically, again, accessibility usually goes to usability, in that it's an overall better experience anyways. And if they're paying attention to it, that means they're that much higher on the list of, we're building a good good theme. And yeah, modern, made for WordPress 5.0, up to date with what, are they flexible enough so when you do want to put in the block editor and things like that, are they able to handle that for you? Next slide there, Ray. Are you on with us? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So kind of the counter things to avoid: old abandoned themes, no support, themes with a few installs. You'll go to the marketplace and it's like 12 people, one person has done. Don't bother. Themes not from reputable sources. Again, seems obvious. The opposite of an efficient theme, a bloated theme, something that works really slowly. And again, how do you know that? Sometimes you don't know it until you try it. If it's paid, there's a little bit of challenge here. It's nice if they have a money back guarantee, but you'll typically be able to find out. Somebody's testing it somewhere. There's a couple of resources where you can see when they do kind of site speed tests and write-ups. But also be wary of online recommendations. As I mentioned before, there are people who are so tied to a particular thing. They say that's the one answer, but they also may be tied to an affiliate program. A lot of blog posts that list a bunch of things are then, you click on that, they're making money. So not that I'm against anyone making money, but I want them to reveal that this is an affiliate program. And so, that's a factor on how that listed on their list. Is the post that you're looking at where it lists I pulled up, there's a million, almost literally a million, 47 best photography sites. Well, what's the date? Did they actually vet it? How could they possibly, did they go through all 47 versus the other 47,000 and decide that those were the best? It's subjective. I look at some of those blog posts, it's more to get blog content. So when somebody searches what is the best photography theme, take all of that with a grain of salt, because there's a whole lot of reasons why you're going to see something on a list. And so it's important to know what are those recommendations actually based on. And when you look at some of the user groups where they're talking about things in such a positive light, and I've just recently licensed a new theme, because everything from people I trust and know, it seems to be perfect for what I'm going to be trying to do going forward. So that's it for choosing a theme. I don't know, in terms of time-wise, I could show you some of the repository and where these things are, but maybe we come back to that. Ray, you're on the theme builder topic now. And now we're taking to another level. So any questions on some of the things that go into looking for a theme, or if you're going to replace a theme or building a new site from scratch, what type of thing? I overwhelmed everybody.
We can get back if you're looking questions afterwards too. We can certainly circle back. Okay. Theme builders. So what is this? We've heard of page builders because Peter and I did a presentation last year, I think, about two the big page builders out there. But what's a theme builder? So this is something that's kind of new that you may hear about. It's really the next evolution of page builders. So a page builder really allowed you to focus on layout of a specific page on your site. But the thing that they were lacking is that ability to actually, lay out content for the rest of the site, or something broader than a specific page. So what they really provide you is, I was alluding to in like Bill's question earlier about, that specific example of case studies. in the past, and even today, a lot of cases, if you want to create a specific template for that example of case studies or FAQ page, whatever, you still have to be somewhat technical minded. You have to be able to learn how to use the templates and the whole WordPress templating language. So it takes some technical skills. These theme builders are doing what page builders have done, is they're providing non-developers, non-technical people the ability to create templates. And again, I think putting more power into people's hands. So, and the other neat thing is they use the page builder tools to do it. It's a little meta, but you'll see that in a second. So if you get comfortable building pages, you'll be very comfortable building themes. One caveat on this too is that they're not complete replacements for, I would say this probably fits the 80-20 rule. So, 80% of the types of things you want to do in terms of modifying a theme, you can do with a theme builder. But you're always going to have these sort of edge cases or things that are more complex where these theme builders are still not quite there. But for most people, they're really a great addition to what page builders can do. The other cool thing too is that a lot of them also allow you to import and export layouts. So, we've had this with page builders before, where if, let's say, I've created the perfect testimonial page with like Divi and other page builders, I can export that and then give it away, sell it. There's marketplaces for these things. So back to what Peter was saying, that there's 50,000 themes out there. In some cases, if it's just that one thing you like about that theme, today you have the ability to export a page if it was built with a page builder. With theme builders, you can actually export the theme itself, which is a neat thing. So we're starting to get into this world of, we talked in the future about what is a child theme. Do you even need a child theme anymore? Well, maybe you can import a theme from a theme builder and then just modify that. So some popular page builders that include this, and this is page builder / themes, Divi, which I'll show a demo of in a second, Beaver Builder, Elementor Pro, Busy Pro. There's other ones too. I think they're starting to do this. And again, not all of them. We're in this early evolution of theme builders where they all don't do the same thing, just like page builders. So this is the unfortunate thing that we didn't really touch upon earlier. We probably should have. One of the reasons I've stuck with Divi is not that it's the best. I'm with Peter. There is no best. What I've learned, though, is the investment of time that I've made in learning my tools. Again, if you're a carpenter, learning how to use your tools properly has made me more efficient. So yep. I think that's the thing. Any one of these will probably do the job. Elementor looks great. All the things I see, all these other themes, they all look great. But it's that switching of you go into someone else's house and things are in different places. It just takes you a long time mentally to be able to adjust to that. So real quick demo. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this, but I'm gonna show you what a theme builder looks like in action. So I've created another demo test site here. And what we'll do is, so if you look at the site right now, this is Divi, sorry. So I'm using the Divi theme, which is a theme and a page builder, which sometimes gets a little confusing. And I just have some blank content on here. So right now there's no, this is the generic Divi templates. So my home page is just my blog archive. I have a couple of blog posts. So by default, if you're creating content in Divi, this is what it'll look like. Not bad. It looks different than other themes, sidebar here off on the side. So what a theme builder allows me to do is, in Divi, I can style a page where I can set things out. I can put buttons and text and columns and all that, or just like you can do with the block editor in Gutenberg. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a template. So we were talking templates earlier. I'm going to create a template, and I'm going to start with a real simple example for the header and footer. So just for the sake of time, I created a pre-built layout already. So in Divi, it looks very familiar to the page builder, the way that you construct these things. So the first thing it allows you to do is set a default template. So I've created this. I'm going to create a global header, add it for my library. And I'll show you in a minute what these things look like, but let me grab it. So here's my global header. And again, I built this beforehand, but they're very easy to build. And then I'll do a global footer from my library. There we go. So now, as you can see, this is my default. So right now, the way this is set up, every single page on the site and post is going to use this global header and footer. So if I refresh my site now, there. So now my header is my logo, My navigation looks different. There's a button. I threw a button in the header, which is something, you know, again, used to be pretty complex to do. My footer is this giant obnoxious footer I stole from somewhere, but you know, think about this, there's a newsletter subscribed. So now your headers and footers are getting a lot more complicated. Again, you could do this in the past, but you'd have to create those template files. So I'll show you real quick, the header and footer, you know, I pulled these from a library, but before the last week or the week before, I'd actually built these using a page builder. So again, I'm saying that, you know, the time you spend learning your page builder tools, you apply now to building templates. So here's my footer template. We'll just look at this one real quick. So the footer template, oh, I'm sorry, it's the wrong one. Sorry, 1 second. Let's look at the header one instead, my global header. Again, think of these as almost as like template parts that I showed earlier. So my header is this. I can add pieces to it. I can change the text. I can throw in more components. So a header can be as big as you want it to be. Again, you know, make it obnoxious over time if you have it too large. So you're using a page builder to build your template parts. And your template parts now you can assign to different pages. So that's the neat thing. And let me show one more example. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but now kind of to Bill's question about you know, creating something, let's say for case studies. So what I could do is I can say that I've now created a template. I'll show 2 silly examples, but I've created 2 templates for blog posts. So I've created a template that's specific to my dog blog posts. And now I've created another, so this one's only going to apply to my dog blog posts. And then I have another one I've created for, let's say, my frogs. So this would be, you know, again, your case types, whatever. So now if I go back to my website, and let me just refresh the site here. So the home page is going to look the same because these, you know, I'm not on that post type yet. But now here's my dog posts, and you can see my categories, dogs. So this is what my dog post will look like. It'll have the title, a big dog picture, it keeps the sidebar, keeps my content. That's, again, you can imagine this. You can style this to be anything. You could have a big, full-blown blank page here if you want. And then here's my frog template that I assigned. My frog template looks a little bit different. I've got a, oops, sorry, let me go back to, let's see, you're doing demos on the fly. So category of frogs, hold on 1 second. Post in specific category of frogs, correct. Do changes. Let me turn him off. Hold on, let me get rid of this one. I think one of the problems is sometimes I think I'm running into a conflict. And again, I'm doing my demo super fast, so please forgive. There's always a demo hiccup on these things. So
while you're doing that, Ray, one of the things that can also drive you crazy when you're doing things like this is if you have caching on. I'm not saying it's happening here, but sometimes you go, I changed it, it doesn't apply it, change it.
Oh,
So caching and caching plugins and even things on the server that keep in memory things sometimes do or don't respond to what's happening with some of the stuff that goes on with templates versus
mine was more demo user error. What I was doing is I forgot the real thing that changes between frogs and dogs besides those pictures is the body. So here's the real meat of the layout. So let me do this again. So I have 2 different posts here. I have the dogs layout. So it has its own custom. It has its own custom body. And this one has, let's say layout. This is this one for all, it doesn't matter. So again, if you think about your page itself as different parts, or you have a header part, you have a footer part, that whole section in the middle is your body. So what I'm doing here in this layout is I've created different middle parts, bodies for my different post types. So let me go back here again. So dogs is going to have a layout like this. You know, dogs is just a basic picture, big full screen featured image. If I go back now and look at my frogs layout, my frogs one is going to look different because I've created a different layout for it. Oh, it should look different. 1 second. Oh, I'm going to abandon this demo in a second, but there's all about frogs. All right, that's what it should be doing. So this template layout, like Peter said, I'm going through this quick, so I'm missing something. But the thought behind it is you can set up the different parts of it so that they apply to different parts of your website. And the thing you can also do in Divi is, you know, we talked about 404 pages. I can create templates here for my 404 page, my archives page, etc. I don't have to create those in code. I can just use this page builder to build those different parts. So again, the theme builders, they're allowing non-technical people to basically build what you normally would have to do in code. Where they don't work completely like doing things in code is if you did have custom functionality that you wanted to add, that you still need to do elsewhere. You can't really do that inside the page builders. So, all right, let's jump to the future, which kind of leads into that.
Hey Ray, can you do me a favor?
Sure.
Because it touches on things, and maybe if we get time at the end, I'll show a few other things. But if you go back to your Divi example with the theme, you go to like as if you're going to build something where you had the pre-made layouts. So you're going to create something and you're going to add a pre-made layout.
From a page, you mean, or for the?
Well, I know when you were looking at just here, you know how you had your saved layouts?
Yep.
You also, so to the left where your pre-made layouts are?
Yep.
Okay. These are block patterns, right? Which we'll talk about. But this is what in WordPress 5.5 and going forward, and a lot of things that when we're, and by the way, just real quick, we've touched upon kind of one of the topics about the words that you use. The word template is probably one of the hardest ones to know. In what context are we talking about template? Because it is, the word template has different meanings, different things. Ultimately, they mean the same general thing, but you know, there are plugins and things where you can pull these templates. But this idea of pulling layouts, this is where, because I'll be talking about that next, is the block patterns that you're going to be able to drag and drop and say, okay, this is what I want. The header section looks like this. I want the next section, and you stack them, and you've got a website that you're just pulling those things together. So this was a great kind of here, and in Divi, right? These are ones that are kind of library available.
Yeah, and what Divi hasn't done quite yet, though, is these are still page layouts, which you can use for your theme body part. Where Divi is going now, Divi introduced this whole thing about like this Divi store or whatever, where now you can actually create theme layouts and export those. So theme layouts are the headers and footers. But eventually, yes, that should be something you could see in here. So.
Great. All right. So we've got kind of the last slide. So the future themes. The future is bright, or is it dark? And it's funny because there's a lot of discussion about that. And with the new, the theme editor and I mean the full site editing and Gutenberg, this is dead, that is dead. Well, we'll get to that. The block editor is in fact here to stay and continues to improve. For those who are still giving Gutenberg a 1 star on the repository and all, when it was first released, it was not ready, and there's no doubt about it. But how far it's come has been amazing. But will it be the death of page builders? This idea of dragging and dropping content on the site. Full site editing is coming, and it looks really promising. Full site editing, I can edit. I could do pretty much exactly what Ray just did. I can create a header. I can create a footer. I can make it conditional as to what page it shows on, so on and so forth. Where now I'm using blocks for each part of the site instead of just the content area. Because right now, page builders typically, until they had the theme builders, you were working on the content area. Blocks, content area. When you start getting into the headers and footers and things like that, now you've got greater flexibility where you're making it anything that you want. Block patterns and site templates, word template here, will make it making it far more easier to build the site that you want. So that instead of trying to find a theme that has all those things, now you say, that's the block pattern I want here, let me just pull that over. Or a site template, you can hear the 5 pages that I need. With a plugin that just pulls all that over, and it pulls over all the blocks and even the images and things like that are amazing, And as I was saying, there definitely be changes. It's ever evolving. Quality themes and page builders are not going away anytime soon. There's, this is a huge user base, and there are people on all levels. I mean, on our call, we have people on all levels of capabilities, development areas of focus, things that they're comfortable with. So there will be a wide variety of set of tools. Some will go away over time. That's what happens. But right now, where we are in terms of becoming your own code-free designer developer who has the greatest flexibility using the themes that they have and now the tools that work with the themes, and then even the theme builders as we get into the theme builders from the different page builders or WordPress itself. And they're talking full site editing. They're still aiming for the end of this year, where at least that initial release for full site editing will happen. But that's gonna be a really interesting place to be, where now you're gonna be looking at it and going, I want to put a search box in my header, and I'm working in just plain old WordPress, core WordPress. You'll be able to do it using these tools. And once people start getting used to that environment of block patterns, saving reusable blocks, and even saving those right now is looking at, take a bunch of blocks that you've made, and now you can save it as a reusable block, but you could turn that into, you can also save it as block patterns that you can reuse, sharing them. There's repositories from it. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. So themes will always be there. I think there's going to be a greater focus on very specific types of themes, and I'm going to be so bold in the next slide to and somebody, I forgot who asked specifically, maybe Denise, you would ask, like, what are some of the themes that you might recommend? The themes that I'll tell you the themes that I'm focusing on now and why, which are the Cadence theme, the Astra theme, and the Generate Press theme. And I'm not even saying it's wise to look at three. They all work in a very kind of similar way. But what all of these have are, first, a free level, so that you can get the Cadence for free. Go back, if you didn't see it, go back to, we recorded it, Ray. I think when we were helping out with the Extreme Makeover, and I happened to use the Cadence theme for that. The Astra theme I've been using for a long time, but I'm seeing a lot of power in Cadence, and Generate Press is something that I've always kind of paid attention to. But again, people that I pay attention to the groups, what they like about it, and now what I'm liking about how the generate blocks and things work together. So in each one of these columns, what we've got here is you get your theme, your free theme. Then you get the thing that makes it premium. So now this is the paid thing. Cadence hasn't come out yet, but they say we are coming out with our premium extension. Astra Pro takes the free Astra theme and adds a whole lot of functionality. Generate Press adds GP Premium that I haven't even used it yet. I just purchased it, as a whole level of flexibility. Then all three of them have their own blocks. So you can use blocks with any of these blocks with any of these themes. However, the ones that they develop that might have a level of interactivity that's just slightly cleaner, but I also, it just feels right. And the Generate blocks is a very special kind of group of blocks in that it's really about layout, where Ultimate, and I think Cadence, has a lot of different, types of, buttons and call to actions and accordions maybe, and all these different things that you could pull in. So they each have kind of this set of blocks that has a lot of functionality. And then, interesting, they all have starter sites. And starter sites, I think, are really interesting. And this is jumping past the block pattern, where you're getting a bunch of blocks that make, say, this section, but you're building whole sites with a click of a button, because you're importing, and it's importing. We didn't even get into the whole, I pulled this theme, it looks nothing like it, where do I get the demo content and all that kind of stuff. And that's a lot of, that might be, maybe we do that even in the next, kind of hands-on type of workshop thing, where, if you're buying a theme off a theme forest, a lot of those will have a demo content folder built in, where you then import that. But most of the time, you're not getting a lot of the content that you're seeing in those thumbnails, that infamous thumbnail look. But the starter templates, and each one of them have it. And what's interesting, what Astra has done is their new version, their 2.0 of their starter site plugin. I haven't tried it yet, but it's supposed to work with pretty much all themes. I can almost guarantee it's going to definitely work with these three. And there's a few other Ocean WP page builder framework, which is premium. But these are all the kinds of themes that are sort of, they're meant to be used with the other tools and work effectively, have a lot of control in the customizer, but then, you know, they live very happily with a page builder. So a starter site that can be used on a different theme, and I'm going to experiment this week and just say, okay, if I have the 2020 theme that comes in a default install, and I go to a starter site, this plugin, and then use say their choice of the Gutenberg choices, and Ray, we could pull that up. I could pull it up to show, but if all of a sudden now you have what a lot of people want when they have the site, which is a site with multiple pages, design, and now you go in and you swap the dog picture for the cat picture and so on. So this ability to go in and really work in the most flexible environment, but still having some of these tools that bring you much further down the development path. And yeah, we're not coders here. Most of us, Ray is the only one. But I'm not a coder. I mean, I can go in and I can fiddle and break, but I much prefer very efficiently written things that allow me to focus on the design elements and pulling the things in. And these three types of packages, for me, work really, really well.
And can I throw in just real quick, I know we're kind of running out of time, but from just back to the future, I think you've touched on it all of it, and just to sort of reemphasize, I think, you know, and Peter and I had this discussion as we were coming up with content for this presentation before. I'm already feeling like where I am today, I've already gone away from child themes, which was, you know, that need to have a child theme just to make minor modifications to my theme, because like Divi and a lot of other themes, they now provide you so much ability to change things. You don't need a child theme. And with the theme builder, I don't need a child theme anymore. So I'm rarely, for new sites I'm building, I'm rarely doing that. So I think that's one evolution. The other one is this idea of these starter sites. I mean, we showed the starter pages and templates. I think in some ways this is going to lead to, maybe not right down the road, but fairly soon, a shakeout of the theme, you know, libraries. I mean, you look at those like 50,000 themes out there. Who needs those? If a lot of those are really just the content specific things, if you have these starter sites where you have the bakery site or you have the, you know, the doctor's office site, I mean, you can visualize those looking different, but if those are built into Astra and Cadence, and they are in Divi and others, what do you need to buy a doctor office theme for? So I think that's where the commercial things are going. And just the final thing is, I do think that eventually Gutenberg, what they're building into WordPress, is taking a lot of what these you know, Divi and the other page builders have started off. It's taking it to that next level. I think there's still, it's going to take a while to catch up. I mean, where we are with Gutenberg now versus when it first got announced almost 2 years ago, it's getting there, and it's rapidly getting there. I mean, that's what impresses me, but it's still not quite there of where these commercial good page builders are. I think the theme builders are along the same line. They have a 1 year-ish head start, a year and a half. Eventually, WordPress is going to catch up to them. Meanwhile, I hope they keep innovating, and they're going to do more and more stuff that eventually will fall into WordPress. So it's a fun time. It's an interesting time, I think, for WordPress developers. Things are always changing, but back to just, I'll wrap my piece up. I think things are getting simpler. You know, WordPress itself, its competition is Squarespace and Wix and these other things. Squarespace, one of the benefits for it has a lot of weaknesses. One of the benefits is you start at the site. If you don't like the way it looks, they have the idea of themes too. You flip around and all your content stays there and things change. So I think WordPress is trying to build that framework and infrastructure to really almost put themes back to what they originally were, which is not having a bunch of stuff baked into them, but you know, WordPress provides all that kind of flexibility and framework that themes had to build out on their own in the past. So my quick thing of, they'll be in the link, so show current template plugin, probably not something you're going to use all the time, but again, if you run into issues, might be something you want to look at. If you want to understand that WordPress template hierarchy, this is a link to that website I showed where you can drill into it interactively. Oops, Peter, I thought you had a couple of resources. No, maybe, I'm sorry, yours was just a recommendation.
I just had that, yeah. I can add more, but yeah.
So I know we threw a lot at people. Again, themes is a big topic. We actually can try to control ourselves of things we could talk about. Just really open it up for questions. Like we can hang around for a bit as well too if we're running over. But any questions that or things we didn't touch on or things we talked about that people still have questions on?
I'm going to offer a quick comment.
Sure.
I've actually been working with the WooCommerce people, and I'm helping them do some meetups. I'm not really a WooCommerce guy, although I have a couple of sites running on them. And
Yep.
they like Astra, and they like GoDaddy's Go theme, which are both free. And GoDaddy has co-blocks. And I've also been kind of at the meetups with some employees of GoDaddy who said they're putting an awful lot into that theme to work with Gutenberg, with the co-blocks. Now, I've been hearing a lot about Cadence, and my next site, I'm probably going to use the Cadence theme. I haven't used it. It's kind of a new one.
Yeah.
But WooCommerce actually likes Astra and Go over their own storefront theme because it's so clunky and they got some support issues.
Yeah.
Share that with you.
No, that's great. That's a good point. GoDaddy is taking a really interesting position when it comes to WordPress. In that there's a couple companies like GoDaddy where you're finding that certain things they've purchased, they've managed. There's
Did they purchase Beaver Builder? I thought. Or did
no, they own Managed WP now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So Managed WP is something where, like, a guy like me who might have clients who have different websites, and I can manage from one position, one dashboard, all these different websites, and that was always by itself, and now it's part of GoDaddy. Which, again, love them or hate them, GoDaddy's an interesting company to kind of deal with. But yeah, but you're right. There are themes that are just better at certain things as an overall theme instead of, and then now you take WooCommerce and you put it in, and then WooCommerce is being very block oriented. So that works well for the block editor. Is Rise still in the call? No. She had asked about talking more about staging and sandboxes and things like that. Maybe for a September thing, we can kind of go through some of that.
Just the WooCommerce, I think, is another great example of, there are still times where you need a theme that is kind of built for these, let's say, more complex plugins. So, for example, Peter was saying like, custom fields or custom post types is one thing where, to style those properly, I mean, you can do it within Divi now. You can style different pages and create different templates for those. But, that's probably the one of the times where you want a theme that if you're using a bunch of complex things like WooCommerce, or I'm trying to think like a LMS system, a learning management system kind of deal. Sometimes those don't play very well with all kinds of themes. So, but unfortunately, a lot of those companies offer their own specialized free themes, to at least get you started. So I do think that there are still times where, depending on the complexity of the site you're building, these generic themes, you may not want to just spend all your time, reinventing the wheel. There may be something out there that kind of gets you started.
Yep. Sandy, did you have a question about child themes?
Well, I did, because I have one, but I'm more confused because I don't know. I use Elementor Pro, and I use a theme called Customify.
Yep.
Absolutely wonderful. And I guess because I came from Joomla land where, we use less files and stuff, I got used to customizing colors and things like that. So I just think it's great because I can make my own blocks called templates when I call them a template.
Yep.
And use them different places in my site, and they match.
Yep.
Because I created them.
Yep.
And I'm used to something like that. So I'm trying to back up in my head, trying to understand, am I in the right place, or have I gone too far, or am I using something ancient history? That's what I want to know.
No, you're not ancient history at all. So I know I haven't never used Customify, and I think that's meant to be similar to some of these things.
Yeah, it does everything you're talking about. So I'm saying, like, isn't this already invented?
Well, yeah, WordPress invented many times over, which is, again, why do we need 80,000, 100,000 theme, and trying to find. And look, I showed 3, and I should be focusing on 1. Ray uses Divi. Elementor Pro gives you all of that capability to really control, to save. You know, I use Beaver Builder as my page builder, and the same type of thing. I create this one section, I can go save that, and then I can use it over and over again. And then if the theme is playing nice, or depending on, right, so this ability to say, have you know, a global color palette that is referenced, and now everything is using the CSS properly, that style sheet. And then when you change it at a theme level, it changes properly across everything, versus it's not uncommon to have to go and chase down some of the blocks that have been, or the modules.
Right, the color change, the colored consistency is so important. So
it really is, and that's where the style
do
sheet.
it once.
Yeah.
Memorize those numbers and use them over and over. And
Right. So when you have the global palettes to work with, that's super helpful.
One thing that maybe we can touch upon either of, you know, again, themes themselves, I think we're, again, speaking from a Divi standpoint too, you know, themes originally, a lot of you know, it was around the look and feel of the site for the visitor. You know, that was really the whole idea of those template files. But I think where themes have changed, especially the professional paid themes, is they've also made it better for the website builder, you know, for us, the people actually working on the site. So you've actually seen a lot more improvements in terms of, like, from a Divi standpoint, I can save things to libraries, I can save sections, I can make things global. All those things that the customizer started to give people a taste of, you know, these professional themes, that's one of the big differences I think you get even today between these different themes. Elementor, the way it handles global settings, is different than Divi and different than Astra and others. So on the front end of your users, and they come to your site, you know, they don't really care for most part what themes have built things, but it's more of you and yourself, especially if you're building more than one site.
Yeah.
And, you know, Peter and I and others on here, if we're building multiple sites, we want to have a strong toolbox. If you're building your one site and you have your one blog, your needs may also be different too. That maybe you don't need the giant cockpit of, you know, 1,000 different things. You want the simple little, you know, simple view. So
absolutely.
Any other questions from folks? And again, some of this stuff we'll send out the slides. Play around with them too. I mean, that's the one thing that I think Peter showed a great example of live when we looked at Sherry and Tad's website before. You know, there's no harm in trying out some of these themes, and again, do it on a staging site, or do it on a site where you're not too worried about things. But you really can install a different theme, activate it, take a look at it, or do a preview of what it looks like, and then always just switch back. It doesn't delete your old theme, switch back. And you'll be surprised, some themes right out of the box are going to make a dramatic difference to your site. And if you've been living with an old theme, I've worked on many client sites where they have, you know, Visual Composer and these you know, things from Theme Forest. Take a look at what's out there in the modern landscape of themes. There's so many things that you maybe thought you were never capable, or things you couldn't do, you can pretty easily now. And again, you don't have to be technical to do it. So hopefully this gave some people some confidence of demystifying what themes are and play around with them.
Yeah. Hey guys, Brian Schneff here. First, I want to thank you for, you know, yet another very informative session. You guys are light years ahead of me, so I just kind of try to listen and learn from via osmosis with much of this. I guess my specific issue, and this is maybe like 101 level type stuff for you guys, but you know, I'm an industry marketing consultant, and lately, I don't know, by serendipity or whatever, I've gotten engaged with a lot of clients who all of a sudden want me to help them improve their website. You know, they've either paid somebody to do something some time ago and it's outdated. It's not just a matter of new content. That much I've figured out on my own pretty much. But, you know, they don't have call to action buttons near the top of the screen. They don't have other types of modernization of design. So, you know, they've already got a running live website. I want to be able to port that into local. You guys taught me about local earlier on, beginning of the year. And that works great when I'm trying to experiment with stuff and so forth. But is there like a one-click way for me to just kind of pick up a website and port it into local without having to rebuild it? And, you know, we're kind of missing something there.
Yes. And again, the quickest one, if you go back to our, on the Facebook page, we have the old presentation as well. The tool that I use is all-in-one WP migration. It's a free plugin. It's for most sites, again, depending on the size of your site, but most average sites, you can literally one click, it'll export your site into a file, a zip file basically. And then when you run local, you have to install that same plugin and then you import it into there. So it's already in your WP one migration thing. I use it so much I always forget the name.
Yeah. All right, great. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I got to sign up for the Facebook page. I haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
And I've been missing all these calls because I get lost. I lose track of the time because my wife's calling me for dinner when we're supposed to be starting these calls. So I'm glad I got on today. Thanks again.
Sure.
All right.
Any other questions from folks? Again, like I said, if the September meetup, certainly bring your questions. If you have a chance afterwards to play around a bit with your own sites, take a look at your themes. That's one thing too, like I said about demystifying. Look at your own themes. If this is your homework, look at your own website that you may be managing for yourself or for someone else, and see if there's things in there that you don't understand. The thing I often hear from people is people are confused about when you look at your admin panel, what is the theme controlling versus a plugin versus
Right.
where did this thing come from WordPress?
No, I think that's huge. I've been trying to think of like that right kind of metaphor visual thing that talks about how one thing supersedes, and there's something that could be controlled by a theme that can also be controlled by a plugin, or maybe the plugin is even overriding with the theme. A lot of these things, the way they work together, and getting that in a kind of visual. I'm curious, for the few people that are left on the call, first of all, just to raise a hand, does everybody know what theme they're actually using right now? Okay. Anybody want to share? Just quick. I'm just real curious what themes are being used.
I'll share.
Yep.
I'm using GeneratePress.
Got it. Excellent.
But I do have a question about it. Okay. When do you know that your website it needs to be refreshed and updated? Mainly because a young lady told me the other day that navigation bars are out. And I looked at her website, I went on the About page, and I couldn't get back.
There is no absolute answer, and anybody who says navigation is out is like, stop being so trendy. What, we all got to keep looking for the damn hamburger icon somewhere and fly in. And oh, by the way, usability, if somebody is blind, they can't use it. Stop it. That's the one. I'll tell you what, now I'm on my soapbox. That's the one thing that I have problem with like, say, Elementor Pro or whatever, where it's a great tool, but it's like, okay, now here's 100 little gizmos you can put on your site. Don't use them all. Use what you need. It's that just because you can pull all of these things in, and this idea, you're gonna simplify. Bill will speak to this. If you start loading up all of this stuff that then makes the site have a complexity that makes it hard for Google to know what the site is and for a user to get to that content, guess what? An AMP, which is a whole other tool that basically says, here's your title and here's your words, and all that other stuff doesn't matter. So it's interesting. I get a little fired up about some of that. What's dead.
Right. Just your question about when to update, when it's no longer meeting your goals, and that's and it may not be updating a theme. I mean, that's why I always say that part of it may be updating your content or other things of it. So don't throw away your theme because maybe there's another problem you're having instead. So because changing themes is especially if you've gone into the page builder world, back to the whole thing about what Peter was saying, like Divi and some of these other page builders, it's a blessing and a curse. It's like my Apple products. I love my Apple products. They're simple. The bad thing is trying to move from an Apple to an Android. You're almost starting over again. So you pay the price for simplicity.
Yeah, if you look at your own site and you're looking at other sites that you like and you don't like your site as much, that's also a clue, right? So you're looking at going, it's not, if you have competitors and it doesn't feel like it's at a level that the competition might be at, or peers, those are clues. If you know, so there's a whole lot of things that have to do with when do you change the look. Obviously, if you've got a website that isn't mobile ready and it sits in a little column and doesn't like phones and big screens and things like that, it's time to really look at things. There's a lot of we'll need to do a whole thing on all the tests that you can run against the site that says that your fonts are too close together and your contrast ratio is wrong, and all the different things that are also part of that, revamping your website all for the good. So, but it's not about taking away a navigation menu.
Peter, I saw a guy do a demo on how to improve the look of a website.
Yeah.
And within 20 minutes, he just changed some fonts,
Yep.
changed some H1 standards, and then tightened up a lot of the spacing. I think I'm not a big fan of a lot of the modern themes and the big spaces.
Right.
He did all that, and man, it went from this thing that looked like an out-of-the-box theme to like just a beautiful, well-designed website.
Well, that's why, like, that cadence theme I really liked, because they have in their free version a lot of the things you're getting from the paid version, where in the customizer you're doing the font size, the font style, the spacing, the line spacing, and you can see it live as you're doing it, and you can just watch that thing just improve just through your customizer choices. It really, and they have the global the global palette kind of thing if you use it right, where now you're saying, okay, all my headings are going to be consistent and all, and in a short period of time you can, just as you're describing, absolutely. And that's a good example of picking a theme that allows you to do that, where you're focusing on that content. You're being able to say, you want to say, all right, I want to look at the typography, the colors, all of those things that you said. And like the 3 themes that I mentioned do that. Cadence gives you the most for free, at least as of whatever today's date is, August 17th, 2020. All right. All right. I could stay, but I know, Ray, you got to go.
Well, like I said,
Thanks, guys.
thank you for joining our rescheduled meetup. We saw great attendance, like I said, same numbers we were expecting last time. So if you have other questions afterwards, like I said, I'm going to send out links to the presentation as well as the recording. Feel free to join the Facebook group, or if you're anti-Facebook, just contact us through Meetup. We're through our emails. We're always happy to help people out.
We try to help.
There is no perfect theme. It's real. Hopefully we gave you a lot of ideas around things to think about and consider when you're exploring themes. So thanks everyone again for joining, and hope everyone has a good night.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.